Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very welcome to Austria, to Vienna. Thanks to BIOMIN for inviting me to this home game. Today, I will discuss about this topic, antibiotics, from the point of a practitioner. You will very early see that I'm not a scientist. I'm a real practical guy. And I want to give you some information how we should see that from the practical point of view and how we see it for solutions for the future. My topic today is to discuss a little bit about farm management, because I'm of the opinion the use of antibiotics and all the problems connected with the use of antibiotics are very important, but it's definitely not enough that some governments or some people who are making laws that they decide to reduce the use of antibiotics, because I'm pretty sure that no one of us is using antibiotics just for fun. We use that substances, the tools, because we badly need it. On the other hand, if we are honest, we have to recognize and we have to accept that we just use it to repair things we have done wrong before. And we have to be aware that whenever we are using antibiotics, we are going the risk to challenge antimicrobial resistance. And this is a huge discussion for human safety, for food safety, for environmental safety at the moment and in the future, and this will be a challenge for us. But on the other hand, every change, every challenge is a new chance for everybody to develop and to stabilize markets. We'll discuss a little bit about antimicrobial resistance, about food safety. Luckily, people in the government, especially in Austria, they are thinking a little bit different now. I'm in working groups for veterinary pharmacology, for antimicrobial resistance, for animal health service as an independent consultant, and they are really looking for practical solutions and for ideas how we can convert this idea, reduction or no use of antibiotics in food animals in the future. And we know we have to adapt strategies in our farming system, in our farms. And you have already heard something about biosecurity. We will discuss about, sorry, this doesn't work really. Okay, sorry. About health management, housing and feeding, genetic and selection. Vaccination will be done by a very competent person in the afternoon. So let's continue. What is the actual situation in terms of drug-resistant antimicrobials? This is a huge challenge already at the moment. But we should accept that we have maybe contributed to this problem, but the veterinary medicine is not the reason for this disaster. But we have to accept it, and it is a big risk. It's reported that already at the moment 700,000 people globally die caused by infection with resistant pathogens, and 50,000 of them die in the European Union in the Western countries. So this is a huge challenge already, and we have to be aware and we have to accept that people are concerned about this situation, about this problem. Additionally, for sure, this means a lot of losses, this means a lot of money for the health systems, and even for the economic impact of this problem is very well known. If we try, or if we want to reduce the use of antibiotics, we have to think about the past. We already had a very similar situation in the European countries when we banned the antibiotic growth promoters from our food animals. And at that time, when we did that, nobody has been prepared to this change. And the result has been we reduced the antibiotic growth promoters, but with that step, we destabilized the gut health of our animals at that time, severely destabilized the gut health, and the result has been a dramatic increase of the use of therapeutic antibiotics. So in the end, no win. And the best controlled country in that system has been Denmark, because it costed Denmark 10 years of development to get back to the same production figures and to the same economic figures they had before the ban of the use of antibiotic growth promoters. And in Denmark, the thing developed in that way that due to this increasing use of antibiotics for treatment, the government saw this doesn't make any sense, and then they developed a system called yellow card. So that means all those pig farmers in Denmark who are using more double the average of the other farmers, they are getting the yellow card of antibiotics, the amount of antibiotics. They are getting the yellow card. And to make it really funny, the veterinarian who is consulting this farm also gets the yellow card. And to make it really funny, both of them are announced officially in the internet, so that everybody can see these are bad guys. And then they have a period of 6 months to reduce the use of antibiotics. And within these 6 months, they're steadily controlled, means a lot of money for the controls. And if they cannot match that, they get another few months. And if they cannot match that, after that, they are banned from food animal production in general. So it's a situation we should not wish, but we should be aware that things like that can happen. And we should also be aware that many people in leading positions, they are really definitely thinking about the idea, generally ban the use of antibiotics in food animals. But this is impossible, and this will be or would be a real disaster. This is the situation of the Danish farmers of the use of antibiotics after the ban of the antibiotic growth promoters. An additional thing which is coming up is the definition of so-called critical important antimicrobials. These are those antimicrobials who should be just for human use. And if we use that in the food animals, it can happen that the resistance development in that system can threaten the health of humans. And these are mainly the fluoroquinolones, third and fourth generation of cephalosporins, macrolides, and glycopeptides, which are belonging to that group. And since 3 years, all European farmers and all European veterinarians who are using this CIA, critical important antimicrobials, they are forced by law, before they use it, or if they use it, they have to prove by antibiograms and research in lab research that there is no resistance development and that pathogens are still sensitive against these bacteria. I'm definitely sure for the discussions we are leading in these working groups that even for the near future, it will be forbidden that we are using antibiotics in finishing barns, in pigs, in cattle. So this will be definitely banned, be banned very soon, so that we are not allowed to use feed medication or water medication in, let's say, within the last 3 months or 4 months of the life of a food animal. So to improve food safety and to reduce the risk of antimicrobial resistance, they will never be able to ban or to forbid the use of individual treatment, because this is additionally an issue of animal welfare. So we have to treat sick animals, otherwise we would have to euthanize them immediately. So this will stay, individual treatment by injection, this will stay for the future, but group treatment by water medication or by feed medication for finishing animals will be definitely banned. So we have to develop strategies. If we have a problem on a farm and if we have to use antibiotics, we should use them very soon. That means we have to look what disease is a problem, what is the health status, the health situation in the farm, and how to check the problems in this farm. Today I want to talk a little bit about practical things. Luckily, due to my profession, I'm at least 1 week a month, I'm somewhere in the world, in different farms, in different countries and continents. And to be honest, I've already seen many different farming systems and different farmers and different animals. In the end, the difference is just the language, sometimes the size, but problems and behavior are the same. Many farmers, or most of the farmers, are, for a principle, not willing to pay for knowledge. So to be honest, who is paying for me if I'm on a farm? Really, never the farmer. Feeding companies, genetic companies, pharmaceutical companies, somewhere organizations, but not the farmers themselves, because they are not really willing to pay for consultancy or for knowledge. And this should change as well in the future. This is a very important tool, I think, to compare, to evaluate the situation of a farm, and to demonstrate them. And this is a problem in many countries, that farmers still rely on antibiotics as a working tool. They are making mistakes, and they cover the mistakes just by the use of antibiotics. And this, in reality, this happens in many, many farms and in many, many situations. And in many situations, additionally, those people are also ignoring the legal situation. There's a lot of smuggling, there's a lot of use of pure substances from somewhere without any control. And in my opinion, if we are producing food for humans, this is not the way and cannot be the way for the future. And additionally, we have to recognize, if we steadily use antibiotics, there is something wrong. And if there is something wrong in the farm doesn't perform, and that farm doesn't work well. And I see the future of veterinarians, or of all the consultants for the future, is to help our clients to survive, to stay competitive. And to make them competitive means not just in terms of numbers of performance, to be on top, but even in terms of acceptance by the consumer. If we can prove that our animal husbandry is sustainable, if we can prove that our animals are healthy, if we can prove there is no risk if consumers take our food, we have the advantage in selling our products. And this is a very important factor on the market as well. And this helps to make our farmers competitive, and they will survive this competition. For sure, there are some international groups working for these different problems, for this use of antibiotics in food animals. You know, European Center for Disease Control made it very important and very mighty system is this EMEA, the medicine agency in Europe. They are really deciding what kind of drugs can be registered, can be banned, or can be used in what way, what are the accepted withdrawal periods, and so on. European Food Safety Authority, there is an international network on antibiotic resistance, and there is an international organization for animal health. This is just one picture of a reality. We have a kind of antibiotic mainstream analysis now in the European countries. So that means practically by law, all the pharmaceutical companies are forced at the end of the year, they have to send a report to the authorities to tell them how much antibiotics has each individual veterinary clinic bought during the last year. So that means they have to send a report to the government for their sales of antibiotics for veterinarians who are doing in food animals. The same veterinarians who are busy with food animals, they have to send a report to the government at the end of the year to which farmer they have sold how many antibiotics or how much amount of antibiotics to which farm. So at the end of the year, we can definitely evaluate the use of antibiotics in the different farms. And additionally, we have a figure to evaluate the different use of antibiotics in the different member states or member countries of the European Union. To make this a little bit visible, they have this system, milligram PCU. This means the milligram of consumed or sold amount of antibiotic activity for 1 kilogram of population-corrected unit. This means the whole amount of the livestock in the country, plus the already slaughtered animals in this country during the year. That means what has been the whole capacity of livestock in this country in this year, and how much antibiotic substance, how much antibiotic activities has been used in this country. The funny thing is, you know, the idea basically has been, politicians told us, so now we want to reduce the use of antibiotics in food animals by 50%. Very nice wish. The funny thing is, if you see the real situation, this is Cyprus, they're using 400 milligram. Austria, we're using 57. So if Cyprus goes down to 50%, they still use 200. That means 4 times that we are using. But if we have to go down from 57 to 28, we have a real problem because we cannot even treat our sick animals. So this is not a tool to say we reduce it for 50%. This is very, very difficult. It should be just the idea that everybody should be aware that we have to reduce it and we have to adapt the situation. I mean, you see, funny thing is all those countries here, Ireland, Sweden, Slovenia, Finland, Litva, in the end, all those countries who have very low consumption of antimicrobials, these are those countries where they have already nearly destroyed food animal husbandry because of crazy legislation. It means animal welfare issues and environmental welfare issues, so those farmers have stopped because they could not compete on the European market. I think, and this is a very important factor as well, up to now, all the veterinarians, we just had the idea to have very, very healthy animals. And to stabilize the system in our production, we developed this so-called production pyramid, but only for the health status level. This is very important. You know, the highest health status for the Borstats, GP and GP generation in pork production, then the gilts, then the piglet production, wiener grower, finisher. Everybody knows this figure, everybody knows this pyramid. But now, things are changing because the acceptance for the use of antibiotics by the consumer is totally opposite. It doesn't make any difference if I'm feeding in my Borstat, I can feed my boars every day with antibiotics. It doesn't have any influence on food safety. So nobody is interested in that. But consumers and consumer protectors are very, very interested. What have you done with the pigs during the last 3 months? So this pyramid is totally different now. The nearer I'm coming to the consumer, the more important it will be to reduce the use of antibiotics, because otherwise they won't accept it. And on the other hand, if we are compared by the use of antibiotics, it's not really difficult to understand. The earlier I'm using antibiotics, the less amount of antibiotic substance I will need. So definitely it's not difficult to explain. If I start a program already in the lactation barn, and I'm treating piglets at the age of 1 week with 2, 3, or 4 kilogram, and I'm using antibiotics for 5 days for 4 kilogram, this doesn't mean a lot of antibiotic substance. But if I wait with my problem up to piglets calving with 70 kilos, I need 20, 30 times the amount of antibiotics to fight against the same disease. But up to that time, with 70 kilos, I have already lost a lot of productivity and a lot of animals. So the future idea to reduce this amount of antibiotics and to improve the food safety is definitely to start earlier. But to enable us to start earlier, we have to know what's going on in the farm. And therefore, we have to look for proper health and disease management, better health management, to observe what's really going on in these farms. And we have to take care, again, not to make the same mistake than we had with the ban of the antibiotic growth promoters. There is no doubt we have to reduce the use of antibiotics. But we have to look for a proper way not to destabilize our farms. So we want to reduce it without economic losses for our farms. And this is the challenge. Sorry. And how to make it? We have to have influence on our production system with the very basic parameters. And the funny thing is, whenever you are discussing about basic parameters in biosecurity, in farm management, everybody is a little bit bored. Says you, Ferdinand, we know that already. It's very nice that everybody knows it. But knowledge alone is not enough. This knowledge has to be converted every day in the day-by-day job in the farm, because otherwise knowledge doesn't work. And therefore, we have to convert this knowledge into reality in these farms. So that means we have to look for the timing of production. We have to care for a strategic use of antimicrobials, and again, to reduce the use of antimicrobials in the final life part of our animals. It's always very funny, the bigger the farms are, the more they tell us, we are so big, we don't need any batch farming. And we have people there every day and every time, and we have to look that they have labor every day. And in the end, many farms, last week I have been to a farm near Bucharest, 12,500 sows. Insemination every day, from Monday to Friday. Surprisingly, not on Saturday and not on Sunday. But anyway, so we have to recognize, as long as we do insemination every day, we have farrowing every day. And if we have farrowing every day, we have different age piglets every day. And definitely, no one of us is available 365 days a year and 24 hours a day. And what we need is to have perfect production. And what we need to have real control in our production steps is we have to have motivated people. And therefore we have to focus, reduce the number of staff, reduce the number of working days, but focus on special things. Because in the end, what are we doing? You know, I go to a farm in Austria. What happens? We have cheap workers from Romania. I go to a farm in Romania or the Ukraine. What do they have? They have cheap workers from Uzbekistan. You go to a farm in Thailand. They have cheap workers from Cambodia. What do they have in common? No education and a very poor salary and working every day. And we expect them to be motivated? Forget it. So we have to focus the system independent of the size of the farm. Otherwise, we will not succeed. And we have to motivate our staff. Reduce the number, enhance the payment, and make their manpower more effective. Again, the strategic use of antimicrobials, definitely, the sooner we are fighting diseases that we already have on the farm, no discussion. The earlier we treat the animals, the less of antimicrobials we will use, and the better health status we will have. But to enable our farmers to do that is, we have to educate the staff to watch the animals, to observe the situation, to evaluate what's going on, to have real figures. And additionally, farmers have to be ready to invest money in health monitoring. Not wait to the situation where there is no more future for the animals, but steadily go in, take blood samples, make post-mortem examinations, take swabs. Only if you have the information about the farm over a certain period, you can make some declaration of the health status. You can give them an issue, what's going on, what is the real problem in this farm. And only if I know what's going on, I can set up effective vaccination strategies, or I can even set up effective therapeutic plans with the use of antibiotics. This is a very important thing, and this should be done nearly every day in our farms. I'm totally sure that the only way to control the system, to control the situation, and to improve the status in our farms is that we have to recognize that health management is the future. And health management is the only way to reduce the use of antibiotics in our farms without losing economic effectivity. Some very simple things now from the practice, what we are seeing every day and what we are watching every day and what is not okay. Sow management, feeding, housing, gilts, gestation, lactating sows. In the end, when our sows are at that place, this is just the harvest. So if the sows are there, we cannot change anymore. They are there now and piglets will be born. It's very important, what have we done before we brought this sow to this place? In terms of vaccination, in terms of feeding, in terms of genetic, of selection, and of timing of insemination. Discuss about the feeding system, about the feeding strategy, about climatization. Just a moment. Is there something wrong? No, okay. The condition of the sow, how we bring them to the farrowing cage, is a very important thing as well. And it's from farm to farm different, but in many farms, farmers and staff do not really know what they are feeding, because they have some feeding bins, definitely, but let's say maximum 1/3 of them have already controlled what does it mean if there is 3.5 on this bin. Because whenever they change the feeding composition, the feed composition, the specific weight of the feed is changing, and therefore all this is done by volume. And if you have a different specific weight, volume means different weight and different intake of nutrition for the animals. So this is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to stabilize fertility, to stabilize pig litter size, to enable a high amount of fertilized eggs to nidate in the sow after insemination, is to supply them after insemination at a relatively high level of energy. But as soon as they have nidated, reduce the feed intake. Dramatically reduce the feed intake. Just to give you an idea, it should happen that, let's say, after ultrasonic pregnancy control, the sows should look already nice. Because sometimes after weaning, they have lost a lot of body mass, so they don't look that nice, they look a little bit slim. But after that, 25 or 27 or 28 days, they should already have a little bit recovered. But then we stop the high feed intake. We leave them on a low level. But this is just an idea, the numbers you see there. They can always be just an idea, because different genetics and different housing systems need different treatment. And this is definitely one thing for all of us. Never ever think that you can compare one farm with the other. Every farm is a singular event. You have different ventilation, you have different housing, you have different stuff, partly you have different genetics. So we need a system adapted to the special need of this farm. Never think that there is a general idea is possible to cover all the needs of the different farms. This is just an idea how we do it. After middle of gestation, after day 85, the fetuses really start to grow, and there you should increase the feed intake, not too much, not to make your sows fat, especially during the last time of gestation, to bring your sows in a good condition. But never expect, if you have a problem with unequal born piglets, or if we have a problem with too small born piglets that you can really change situation just by the amount of feed intake. This is just a rough information how to stabilize the system, not to solve real problems. We have in many farms, we have a huge problem, especially with older sows, that already at farrowing time, they start to sleep a little bit. And in many farms, you get the information, we have some disease because we have a lot of stillborn piglets. And if you go to this farm, you see they have a very prolonged time of farrowing, especially in sows after third or fourth litter. And it's very easy to control, and they tell you, they can do whatever they want. They can inject them with oxytocin, with everything, but they do not really react. And in the end, this is a lack of calcium at the farrowing time. And this lack of calcium at the farrowing time is definitely a problem because they have been overloaded with calcium during the gestation. And the older the sows are, the more negative is this impact. Because they cannot mobilize, when they start to farrow, they cannot mobilize the calcium from the skeleton. And therefore, please care during the gestation. Sows should have a maximum of 6.5, if it's not possible, maximum of 7 grams of calcium per kilogram of gestating feed. And this is a level for all the different genetics. The only things you have to care for, in some farms you are feeding gilts with that gestation feed as well, and for gilts it's not enough, because they are still growing and they have a problem with the skeleton if you don't do that. It's a very simple thing to control in farms where we have stillborn piglets and you have slow farrowing speed in older sows. Just make a diagnostic therapy in these sows, inject them with calcium. Give them a lot of calcium, intramuscular or intravenous, and you will see within 10 minutes farrowing starts as usual. And this is the proof for this problem. But this is not only the problem that we have some stillborn piglets. The problem is if farrowing goes on very slow, many of the piglets have a lack of oxygen supply during this farrowing. And these piglets are not stillborn, but these piglets are weak when they are born. And what is the result if I have weak-born piglets? They have no power, and if they have no power, there is no colostrum intake. And the lower colostrum intake our piglets have, the less viability they have. And this is a huge impact. The amount of colostrum and the quality of colostrum piglets can drink during the first hours of life this is the future of the life of these animals. And therefore it's so important, not just look at the figures, who is dead and who is alive. In our system, just to survive is not enough. Our animals don't have to survive, our animals have to perform. Otherwise, it's better they die very early. This is just a visual thing, how we are feeding the animals, how we want to feed the animals. In the lactation system, if possible, what we like, where we have very good success, is to feed the lactating sows after farrowing, during farrowing, continue feeding them with gestation feed at a very low level, really very low level. Doesn't matter, it's a religion, if you have 1 or 1.5 kilos, this is not the problem, but to keep them low. But be careful, because some people are very smart and they tell us at the day of farrowing, 0. So then the problem in some farms, they know, or they think this sow is farrowing today, 0 feed, but she didn't farrow. But she will farrow next day. Today is farrowing, 0 feed as well. And then at the third day maybe the same, so the animals do not get feed for 2 or 3 days. This is not the way. So if you see that she's already farrowing, definitely stop the feed. But it doesn't matter if she is eating 1 kilo, 1.5 kilos, she will not have any problems with that. But please reduce them. And after day 3, we start to increase the feed intake. And after day 3, if possible technically, we start to feed them with lactation feed. And the increase per day, the feed intake increase per day should be really very stupid, 0.5 kilos. Not faster. And you will see if you follow up the system, and this is the aim of the game, we expect the average of a sow herd, of a sow group in the lactation barn on day 16, the average intake should be 100 megajoule per sow. And if you start too fast, you will never reach that. And it's the best thing you can have if you go in on day 5 or day 6 of lactation before you start feeding, and all the sows are up and all the sows are waiting for feed. This is the best situation you can have in a farrowing barn. And then you start them up. And don't be afraid. Piglets at day 3, at day 4, at day 5, they don't drink a lot of milk. So we don't need to oversupply our sows with the system. Definitely, water supply for sows, this is still a big issue. If I want to have my sow at the level of 8 kilograms of feed intake per day, we have to know that she has to drink at least 25 to 28 liters of water. And with some drinkers, if you try some drinkers, you know, this will cost 26 hours. So what is the result? She cannot drink enough. If she cannot drink enough, she will not eat enough. And she's getting disbalanced. So look for a proper water supply. And look for fresh water. We have some level drinkers in some barns. So they get the feed in the morning, and the level drinker says, okay, full, no water. And if the sow is sick, she has 41 degrees of body temperature in the morning, she gets her feed and she doesn't eat. If she doesn't eat, she cannot drink because water doesn't come out. So this animal has high fever, and this animal doesn't get any water for 6 hours. And this is a disaster. So for this sow, this lactation is done. And therefore, water supply and access to fresh water for sows is absolutely important. In the next topic, in most of the Asian countries it's already done, is temperature. Feed intake at high temperatures, higher temperature, negative correlation with feed intake. There is no discussion. And these evaporation cooling systems, these cooling pads we have now in our farms, this is a real big positive impact for the continuous feed intake of sows during the lactation. And this is not only important for the sow, for the condition of the sow after weaning, but this is even important for piglets. We had very nice control because we have some farms, they are selling the piglets immediately after weaning at the age of 21 days. And if you do, or you have to do some vaccination strategies, I remember times where we had not so nice vaccines against influenza, and we had to vaccinate a sow herd against flu, and we did it definitely, but the sows got fever after the vaccination, and the feed intake of the sows was reduced for 1 to 2 days, and the weaning weight of the piglets has been reduced by 350 grams, just because of the sow didn't eat 1.5 days. So just to show you, it's not only a question of the condition of the sows after weaning and for bringing them on heat again, but even the same situation for the piglets at weaning. This is what we want to see. This is just an example. This is farm from Vietnam for these cooling pads, and we have installed such cooling pads in some farrowing rooms and sow farms in Austria already as well, and this is really very effective and this is very helpful. But on the other hand, we also have to look that the condition and the temperature in the barn is not only nice for the staff, it should be nice for the piglets. Last week in Romania, we have been in an insemination barn, ventilation 100%, outside temperature 5 degrees, staff inside with anorak working. So, I mean, maybe it's nice for the people because they have fresh air, but they are inside with anorak, and sows are inside with nothing the whole day. Some drinkers broken, so they're lying in the water, and they are living in a snowstorm. So, temperature, airspeed has to be adapted to the need of the animals, never to the need of the staff. Genetic, it's very nice to save some money and to buy cheap animals, but you can imagine that this guy is not a real advantage for his progenies. And select animals as soon as possible and as soon as necessary. Animals like that, they don't have colostrum supply enough, they don't have milk supply enough, and we are weaning weak piglets. We are getting problems with piglet diarrhea, getting problems with streptococcus. This is not a guilt, but this animal has been already selected to be a guilt. Look at them, otherwise you will have problems later on. This is the future. The future of a farm is the quality of the gilts, and is the selection quota in this farm. The better we stock our farm, the better result we can have. Quarantine facilities, if we buy animals from outside, no discussion about the quarantine. Not only to protect your farm against the problem of the new animals, but even to give the new animals time and chance to adapt to the situation on your farm, to vaccinate them properly, to infect them slowly with the situation you have in the farm, therefore quarantine. But farmers, and there is always a way to have a quarantine. You just have to be aware that you want it and that you need it. And the more simple you have it, as you can see, the more the animals like it. For gilts, definitely, in the end, if they are already bigger, you can feed them with gestation feed. The only thing you have to increase is the calcium content. But never feed your gilts with too much protein. You should enable them with a reduced protein content to set up some fat at the back to stabilize them for the future. And additionally, it's very important, not only the age of the animals. Maybe we can discuss about the optimum age of 240 days at first insemination. But far, far more important for the future performance and for the situation on your farm is the live weight of a gilt at first insemination. And this should be between 130 and 140 kilos. And believe me, all those animals who have first insemination with 180 and 190 kilos, they are not sows, they are elephants. They have 350 kilos after that. They have problems with their legs, they have problems with their fundament, they do not fit to the farrowing cage, they do not fit to high temperature, they have problems for their whole life. So this is a very important thing. Control it, check it, and bring them in heat on time. And therefore, again, nearly all my clients in Austria, they are synchronizing the gilts. And you know, heat detection in gilts is not really funny. They are very sensitive and sometimes they're a little bit stupid. So it's a real challenge. So if we do synchronization, we can really define the time, the body mass, the age of the animals, and you have them on heat and you have them pregnant. And if you do it like that, like I have it written here, termin-orientated insemination, if you synchronize 100 gilts, you have at least 95 of these animals in the farrowing cage at the proper time, at the time you expect them to be there. This is the system, how to use it. Very important, even in gilts, insemination is a very individual, sex is a very individual, personal thing, so don't do the insemination in groups. Give them in cages, fix them in cages so they can concentrate to this job and they can, this is the system how we are using it. We are drenching the animals. Why do we need this batch system? The batch system is the only way to interrupt infection chains in our farm. This is the only way for family farms to enable them to create groups that are big enough to be run all in, all out, not per cage, but per room, or even better per building. And to enable us to produce large groups of equal sized and equal aged animals. And additionally, as already mentioned, this is a way to improve life quality and performance of all the people involved, because they can focus. 90% of my clients in Austria are running the farms in a 28 days, 4-week batch farrowing system, and in my opinion, this is a very, very nice thing. The only thing is we have to care as well. As soon as we decide batch farrowing, and even if it's 1 week batch farrowing in big farms, Focus that on one day. Then you have one group per week. And the same is if I'm focusing on batch fairing system, I also have to take care that all the sows are in one group. And if you synchronize sows as well with termine-orientated insemination, you have them on one day. Yesterday night I had a pregnancy control on the farm. We have weaned 150 sows, 115 sows. We had 4 returnals and 31 gilts. And all of them have been synchronized. Insemination 1, 18 hours later insemination 2. And yesterday I did a heat detection. And out of this 148, I think now, or 46, we had 131 animals pregnant. So and this is the system how it should work, to rely on real numbers. Just a few pictures. Naturally, if we have to inseminate big groups of sows, you have to care for a proper environment so that farmers can really handle that they have access to the animals, that the animals feel well, that there is enough light, there is enough place for a stimulating bore, and to make things funny. This is a gestation barn, as we wish it. Oh no, it's a joke. But we have different systems in our gestation barns anyway. In my opinion, it's very, very important that these are self-fixing cages. In my experience, is the best system. So if they go in, they are safe and they are quiet. And if you look at that facilities, there is 120 sows in one row, and there's maximum 1 or 2 sows outside. The others stay inside voluntarily because they don't want to fight and they don't want to discuss. Piglets, very important to care for a proper colostrum supply, to look for piglet drinkers, to make them eaters. It means to give them early enough pre-starter. Not expect that if we are using pre-starter, that you are increasing weaning weight dramatically. This will not happen, but you are training them. You are training the animals to eat, and you are training their digestive system to react. These are some facilities for early weaning, if we have, especially for gilts or for big litter sizes, when the animals cannot really suckle their piglets, we are weaning them quite early with very simple methods and to bring them away. This is just an overview. I mean, you can imagine these are piglets who have been eating with the sow. These are piglets who have not been fed, and these are so-called non-eaters. And you can imagine if an animal, a piglet, doesn't eat for 75 hours after weaning, the blood sugar level is dead down. This animal will never eat again. This animal is in the reality is lost. Definitely for the whole system, to stabilize the immune system, we have to recognize for all our animals, the main concentration of our immune system happens in the intestinal tract. Most of the antibodies we are producing are produced in this system. And therefore, we have to recognize if we destabilize this system, we are destabilizing the immune system of our animals, we are destabilizing the immune response of our animals, and therefore we are reducing the performance of our animals. Look, for the feeding and digestion, raw material quality, molds, germination, mycotoxins, the composition, especially this is one of the last comments I want to make is the higher importance of crude fiber. Crude fiber is not crude fiber. Everybody has to be aware that we have different possibilities, different components or different parts in this crude fiber, and we should really look for a proper composition of our crude fiber because some very important parts of this crude fiber are responsible to feed our probiotics, our positive bacteria in the microbiome of our animals, and this is very important to stabilize the health and the digestive tract of the animals. Finally, just an idea what we are doing as well, to have technical prevention of diseases, of infections. This is what we have established on a breeding farm now, is air filtration. This is working now since 1 year. Has been a boar breeder breaking down with births the second time. Now we decided to make it with air filtration. So this must imagine is the building is a 120 sow farm, breeding Piedra and large white. So we just established a filter system and in the roof, it was in the roof, and with overpressure we are blowing filtrated air inside the barn, and we have overpressure everywhere. The idea behind that, if you see the system, what they are doing in the United States, they have air filtration with under pressure. The problem in the system is as soon as one window is broken, as soon as one door is up, under pressure suckles unfiltrated air in. So in my system, I have overpressure everywhere, and I do not care if the farmer is opening the door, the window, or something. I'm blowing out air from inside. The only difference I did is I just took away the ventilators of the exhaust chimneys, and I replaced the ventilators by flaps, and they are controlled by the computer. So you know, this is just a pre-filter. This is a fleece we have in the underground construction of roads, just to filter out the rough dust particles. Then inside we have a HEPA filter, a pre-HEPA filter, and a real HEPA filter, and after that we have a cooling pad as well. So we're blowing the air inside with overpressure, with sensors, and now we are supplying the animals with very clean air, and it looks very nice. Finally, this is a very interesting thing now on another farm. We are disinfecting the air with a cold plasma system. This is a facility for 750 piglets. We have outside a filter system. We are circulating 3,000 cubic meters of air per hour. We are filtering this system. Then we are treating the air with a plasma system. And after the plasma system, we have an active carbon filter to filter out the O3, which is already produced by the plasma. And with that system, at the moment, it seems we have weaned now 3 batches. That means 2,300 piglets. And we have not been using any antibiotic. No amoxicillin, no colistin, nothing. Seems to work really, really nice. The only problem is if you pick them out of this facility and move them to another barn afterwards and you have strep suis inside, you have the problem later on. Anyway, this is another discussion. But at the moment, this seems to be very promising for the future. At the moment, it's a little bit too expensive anyway. So, in my opinion, it's very important that we go inside the farms, that we look at the farms, that we are observing the animals, that we are educating our people, our staff, how to observe animals, how to evaluate the situation on the farm, and to combine all these results together to a structure, to a plan, to run the farm in the future. Thank you very much for listening to me. Wish you a nice day.